everybody? Happy trade deadline day to you. Thought I'd hop on here just for a couple minutes, chat a little bit about what's been going on. We know by now the Green Bay Packers did not make a move. They did not acquire anyone at the trade deadline, since that formally passed about an hour ago. But they did trade one individual away, Preston Smith being sent to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I know first thoughts on this may be that the trade compensation was a little lackluster. And I get it. Ultimately, Edge Preston Smith traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a 2025 7th round pick. Curiously about that 7th round pick, if you're wondering, no, we don't know exactly what pick it's going to be. We don't know which team that's coming from. If you go dive in on the Pittsburgh side of things, they do have access to a number of 7th round picks from other moves that they've made, but they're all contingent on a number of things. So anyway, not important. We'll find out later what exactly 7th round pick is coming. But Preston Smith, goodbye to him. The Packer veteran leader amassed 44 sacks in his Packers career. But over the last month, his snaps have been dwindling. Bill Huber of Sports Illustrated reported that Preston Smith wanted more playing time. He didn't make a huge deal about it in his trade story. He's not saying that Preston Smith demanded to be traded or anything like that. It was just, he did make mention that Preston Smith wanted more playing time after seeing dwindling snaps over the last month. And so I think we could say really a couple things here, right? Ultimately, Preston Smith was a very good leader for the defense, has been for a long time, probably still was to this day. But Preston Smith, like basically any other defensive end on the roster right now, has had a pretty difficult time adjusting to the new scheme. Hasn't exactly set the world on fire with production this year. Only 2.5 sacks thus far for Preston Smith. 2 of them are against Tennessee, and then you also got that one against Philadelphia, or half technically. So it's not like he was doing great things in this new scheme. So ultimately, you got to look at it that way. Yeah, we'll get to the other side of this. Could they have brought someone else in? Sure. But just in terms of Preston Smith in and of himself, was he being a dramatically better player than LVN at this point? Not really, not from a production standpoint. Maybe they want to give more snaps to Aaron Mosby. Maybe they actually want to get Brenton Cox Jr. active for a game this year. Or maybe Jamin Davis is actually still being rolled out as an edge and they actually like what they have there on the early returns. Or maybe this is just a vet who wanted to play more and needed to go elsewhere to do it. I do like him going back to Pittsburgh on a personal note for Preston. Him going back to a 3-4 defense in Pittsburgh especially. He should be able to do some nice things there for sure. So let's see what you guys have got to say. Then, of course, we'll look at the other side of the coin of this, dive into a little bit more details before we wrap this up. I do want to make sure that this is at least on the quicker side-ish today because Brian Gutekunst does go on at 4:30 to talk about the trade deadline as well as just his typical bye-week press conference. So just a heads up on that. All right, Eric, what you got? Thanks, Preston, for always being a pro. Best of luck in Pittsburgh. Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that, right? He was a defensive leader for a long time here. He was always seemingly one who was more than willing to speak to the press. The young guys obviously loved him. Even Jaden Reed put out a tweet right after the trade news broke that the OG is gone. So, yeah, I hope he does well there. Taylor Bell. Taylor saying, let's see what LVN and Mosby and Gary and Cox and anyone, right? That's the 5 they still got left. And the thing is, too, I saw a lot of clamoring online. One of the trades that was made was Baron Browning. I know Packers Kingdom. I know if you're out there, I know you wanted Baron Browning. I get it. But he was one that got moved in a trade. Or a lot of people wanted the 24-year-old Giants edge rusher, right? Well, the thing is, both of those guys are pretty small. Keep in mind, the Green Bay Packers like their edge rushers to be 255, 260, 265, 270 pounds. Well, Jabari out of the Giants is 240. Browning's in that same ballpark. It's just generally not how the Packers do their edge. Now, if you want to make the argument that given how the pass rush is doing in this new scheme, maybe they do need a light one. Well, I get it, and I'm inclined to agree. But that's obviously not how they're feeling right now. Kevin Kebbles, what's up? Thanks for everything. And was mentioned this offense, the offseason, the D is in transition. These guys are here now, will probably not be the guys in 3 years. Yeah, I do think that the move today, moving on from Preston, and there's some real financial aspects to the Preston trade. I mean, look at this. Over this year, they saved $2 million in cap. Then 2025, and keep in mind, cap can roll over now. So that could become 2025 cap, right? 2025, they save $7.6 million in cap. 2026, $18.2 million in cap save. So a very, very big portion of this trade is the fact that they do get out from these last couple years of the Preston Smith contract. That's part of the compensation if you really look at it in its full picture. So just something to keep in mind there. Raganis saying Za'Darius just got traded back to the NFC North while his free agent signee partner got traded away. Weird how things go, right? And kind of like weirdly fitting that they both got traded on the same day. Man, that's Smith brothers era. Before Za'Darius kind of went off the deep end with a lot of different stuff in Green Bay, that Smith brothers era was such a special freaking year too. I mean, where they were doing press conferences together, and man, that's always going to be a fun time to look at for sure. Taylor, rotation I want to see. Gary, Wyatt, Brooks, LVN. Kenny should come off the bench. Ooh, that is a bold take, Taylor. Kenny has not been great. No doubt about it, for sure. I don't see a move coming to the bench for him, especially like Wyatt. He is doing a lot better in the run defense realm this year thus far. But still, he's at least looking at the career path for him. Consistency around the run game has always been kind of his issue, right? I think one curious thing that they may want to start taking a look more at was something that they actually experimented a little bit over the last 2 weeks in taking Carl Brooks and kicking him out onto the edge a little bit more. I mean, Carl Brooks does have a lot of collegiate experience at edge. He's one of the only guys that actually has routinely done both inside and outside. So it would be curious to see Brooks kicking out, and then you got Kenny as well as Wyatt on the inside opposite Gary. Something just to think about. Taylor, Brenton Cox Jr. is 6'1", 240, and he is by far. Now, Mosby's kind of down there too, because Mosby did convert from outside linebacker to being an end, but that is very much not how they like their edges. I mean, even Enagbare is 256, something like that off the top of my head. Like, he's mid-250s, and so they like him larger, for sure. Rev Trev, what's up, Rev Trev? Everyone loves Preston, but look at his production this year. Nothing impressive about it. Exactly. Yes. I mean, realistically, you're looking at a guy who's over 30, was due big money over the next 2 years, and frankly, like most of their DNs, weren't exactly lighting the world on fire in this scheme. So, honestly, I would just be more, I don't want to say concerned. That's not the right word. I'm more curious about negative impacts on locker room. 2 years in a row now, you've shipped off a player that was pretty well beloved in the locker room. First, it was Rasul at the deadline. Now it's Preston Smith. And the circumstances are completely different. Last year, you were 3-6. Rasul was a starter, was playing snap in and stuff. Preston Smith, still kind of a starter, but reducing snaps. Now you're 6-3, though. Being a seller at 6-3. Like, that's kind of what I'm worrying about is the larger context of the locker room. They'll be fine, but still just something kind of entered my brain. But on the field, Preston hasn't done much. Kevin Kebble's clearly like the cornerback rook since they traded CB1. Sorry. Oh, so they clearly like the cornerback room since they got rid of Preston Smith. I know they don't play the Jets this year, but the chances of us ever having a Preston Smith versus Devontae Adams matchup they're gone now. Rep Trev, 9 games, 2 sacks versus Tennessee, half sack versus the Rams. I'm sorry, that's what it was. 19 total tackles, 3 stuffs. We just saved ourselves millions. Yes. I mean, and it's substantial money in the next couple of years as well, plus the 2 that they get onto the back end of this year. So, I mean, I get it. I fully get it. It still is surprising to see a 6-3 team contending for Super Bowl trade away a guy. Totally get that viewpoint that others have. I said all week on the pod, I didn't think that they would move Preston if they didn't bring someone else in. And here we are. But it makes sense. Kevin Kebble's Brian must like his corners since he traded CB1. There it is. All right, I got you. Raganis, only thing I don't like is the youngest team getting even younger, OG, like Reed said. Yeah, I did see some people joke on Twitter. I think it was Peter Bukowski who said that Brian Gutekunst's just like Leo DiCaprio. Once they turn 30, they're out the door. Yeah, and so that's kind of what I was getting at with like the locker room aspect to all of this is, one of your oldest guys out the door again. And that's already after Aaron Jones was gone in the offseason. Rasul last year. Rasul wasn't that old. He still was a leader. So I get it. But I will say, from just a play on the field standpoint, one player that I'm very interested to see more of is Aaron Mosby. Like, totally. He was much like a couple years ago, if you remember, if you were around at that time with me, I talked about how Rudy Ford was like this, was just a spark plug defensively. And no, he wasn't perfect, but man, the energy he brought to the defensive side of the ball was just so what was needed at that position, the safety room at that time. Well, Aaron Mosby in the last, getting those few snaps that he did against Detroit, his first defensive snaps of the year, felt that way again, that he was the spark plug for a pass rush that desperately needs a spark plug. So I'm curious to see him get more play. I also put this out on Twitter, just a thought that I want to make sure that I relay here. They're 6-3 at their bye. Not a single player that they would have gone today or gotten would have offered more improvement than just them fixing their own mistakes, right? They're 6-3. And after every single one of those 3 losses, we've sat here and said, boy, they shot themselves in the foot. Boy, they did this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this. And it's all mental mistakes. They could have won that game if they just would have fixed it, right? And so I'm saying is that's realistically the position we're in. Brian Gutekunst wasn't just going to look at the Detroit game and try to plug a hole from the Detroit game. No, he's looking at the whole season. And they understand in that building that the most complete path that they have to reaching their potential is going to be actually fixing the things we know can be fixed, like dropping the freaking ball. Fix that stuff, reach your full potential. Much more than just going and getting a different guy would have been for a day 3 pick, or even in some cases a day 2 pick. So yeah, that's where I'm at. All right, I retyped that 5 times. I'm not put myself in the trade block now. You're the next veteran to go. Sorry, man. It's interesting. Jaws, the only guy on defense that has survived, been seen as part of the future each year, and either stayed productive or got better. Well, I think you can make the argument though that Jair has fallen off a little. Still, when he's on and healthy, one of the best corners in the league. But I do think you can make the argument that Jair is not quite at the full-blown peak of his powers as he was 2020, I think was his best year. Yep, Mando G-Man. Yep, mental mistakes are what they need fixed. That's exactly it. Kevin Kebble's honestly having the bye after trade week feels oddly perfect timing, right? No one's in the building. They can go take their time. They can go, space out however they need to, do their self-reflection, their homework for Matt LaFleur, as it was kind of coined, and then come back and get back to work next week. I do kind of like this. RevTrev, which Packer is the most likely to replace Preston Smith in that role? Honestly, kind of a good question at this point. I think the obvious plug-in for most situations is just going to be LVN. And that is one player that they have got to get more substantial improvement from. Like Lucas Van Ness, ultimately in his sophomore year thus far, I think you can say pretty accurately has not taken the step forward they hoped for. In some ways, at least from grading purposes, it looks like he's regressed from year 1 into year 2. He's one guy that really has to step up, and I think predominantly takes on a lot of what Preston Smith was doing. The other thing, though, is I do think that this does kind of transition into more snaps for Aaron Mosby, and then also potentially Brenton Cox if they actually start elevating him on game days. But the pure one, the easy swap, Preston, more snaps for LVN. I think Enagbare will continue to just rotate with Rashawn. They've kind of every so often with their 4 horsemen approach on D, they play Enagbare and Gary together, but a lot of time in using Enagbare, it's swapping in for Rashawn to give him breaks. I think that's probably going to stay going on. Rockinese, yeah, Eric Wilson play made Preston expendable. You can only have one old guy in every position. But that's the thing, they're not even in the same group anymore, because now Preston Smith would have been an end. You can't even say they're all linebackers anymore. It was Kenny and Preston being together. Yeah, they chose Kenny. He had the contract. Gavin Cavill, speaking of the future, which wide receiver do you think is the odd man out so far? I know they're on different timelines, but still fun to monitor. Really, really good question. I think given what happened earlier this year, I do think some thought of that has to go to Romeo Doubs, right? For me, though, and I was all over this in training camp. I felt kind of bad about it, but it's just the reality. Man, if Dontavian Wicks keeps getting open but can't catch the ball, what's the point of getting open? It's a simplistic question, but it's the question asked of coaches from flag football in first grade through to the pros. You can get open all you want. If you can't catch, what's the point? Right? And so I think they really like Dontavian Wicks. I do think that there's things to fix there. And frankly, if I were in charge of rotations and everything like that, coming out of the bye, I would have to take a severe look at beginning to cut down on Dontavian Wicks reps until we know that he can be relied upon in a more full way. Trot out more Dobbs, Watson, Reed, and really, frankly, start pushing the ball to Reed more and more as far as I'm concerned. So there you go. Just wanted to recap as well for you here. Do want to make sure that I get to all of the trades today. So just in case, don't do that to me. Now it disappeared. The whole tab closed. All right, let me see if I can pull this up here. But basically what I wanted to say here was, I don't think there's too many trades that the Packers, you could say, would have jumped at up and down if they were offered to Green Bay. I do think there were probably some little improvements out there, but ultimately, like, the trade market just didn't shape up in a full way for where Green Bay needed to target. So Kevin Kebble's Wicks' hands feels like the missing piece. Change half his drops and the season already looks so different. The Lions game alone looks different if he catches that touchdown. But yeah, it's true. I was reading some numbers earlier today. He's at like 16 catches over 43 targets. Amongst the bottom in the NFL in terms of catch percentage for guys over 20 targets. He's a double 20 targets. That just has to get fixed. Rockinese, I want to see Marshawn Lloyd play. Come on, man. We need those explosive long runs. Jacobs is doing his thing, though. Yeah, Josh Jacobs is doing great. Lloyd, I don't know. Anytime, like, LaFleur's been very, very vague when asked about Lloyd lately. And it just doesn't sound like he's that close. I know, like, they've talked about, like, him doing some rehab stuff like that, but I don't know. It just, something's going on there. And speaking of ankles and IR guys, Luke Musgrave, Matt LaFleur confirmed like he had surgery on that ankle. And the hope for Musgrave is just to get him back before the end of the year, which seems to put a nice pause on all questions regarding Luke Musgrave for at least like the next month as he recovers from ankle surgery. So this is what I want to read off. In terms of the trades that were completed today, Broncos traded Baring Browning to the Cardinals for a 6th round pick. I know Packers Kingdom would have done that in a heartbeat. I know. But again, kind of the same deal. Uber light edge is just not how the Packers generally deal. Browns trading Zadarius Smith and 2026 7th round pick to the Lions for 2025 5th and 6th. Great value there for the Lions. Not going to deny it. Zadarius Smith was not coming anywhere near Green Bay. There's no way in sweet goodness Brian Gutekunst was going to bring back Zadarius Smith after everything that happened. Bears trade Khalil Herbert to the Bengals for 2025 7th. Okay. Panthers traded Jonathan Mingo and a 7th to the Cowboys for 2025 4th, all because Mingo's on a rookie deal. Saints, I would have loved to see Marshawn Lattimore acquired. Saints traded Marshawn Lattimore in a 2025 5th to the Commanders for 2025 3rd, 4th, and 6th. See, I would have loved to acquire Lattimore until you read that part, and that's the return. The Commanders gave up a lot for Lattimore, and frankly, we already have one all-world corner who's very, very expensive, who plays like half the games. A second one would have been cool, but that's a lot for that. Jets traded Mike Williams to the Steelers for a 5th round. Packers traded Preston Smith to the Steelers for a 7th round. Rams trade Tre'Davious White and a 7th to the Ravens for a 2026 7th. And then Texans trade Khalil Davis to the 49ers for 2026 7th. Not too many of those trades that I would have said like, oh, Green Bay absolutely unequivocally should have done that. So that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. Kevin Kebbels, thanks for this, fam. Go enjoy the bye week. You as well, my friend. I rock. Go Packers. Absolutely, man. You know, so I understand the frustration over the Packers not doing anything today. I get it. But still, I'm telling you, the number one thing that the Packers have got to do to improve, they're already 6-3, but to improve is internal improvement. There is a multiverse stream out there where the Packers don't shoot themselves in the foot 3 times and they're 9-0. This is a roster that can go out and play with anyone. And I don't believe that really any of those names of the trades made today would have dramatically changed that for the Green Bay Packers. And so that's where we sit. It would have been cool to see new additions, but the most complete path that they have to actually realizing their potential is all internal, and they just got to stop shooting themselves in the foot. So, all right, everybody, I'm going to jump on out of here. Brian Gutekunst does go on just real shortly, I do believe, unless I got my timing all wrong in this. I don't think so. Nope. Oh, hey, Rep Truck, what you got? Has anyone actually documented why Wicks has dropped so many passes? A number of them is because Love is throwing the ball behind the route. Yeah, I mean, some, but I wouldn't go that far. I mean, there's still catches that a receiver is expected to make. Like, perfect example would be the would-be touchdown against Detroit, right? I mean, that was still, ball placement was not perfect on that. I'm not going to pretend that it is, but that was very much a catchable ball and one that should have been caught. And even to go beyond the scope of just Wicks, you've got the Tucker Kraft drop there as well. You got the Romeo Dobson, the quick slant drop. So ball placement can always be better. But there's also no denying that Wicks has not been reliable from a cut-catch standpoint this year thus far. He just hasn't. What else we got? I rock. Absolutely agree. John, Commando G-Man, great chat. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you. All right. I want to jump on out of here. I did say from the get-go that I want to make sure that I was out before Brian Gutekunst started talking. So hop on over to that. Go enjoy that in about 9 minutes starting time. But I'll be back tomorrow for the actually regularly scheduled LTB live. That'll be 4 o'clock. And then we'll see how the rest of the week for the bye week progresses. See if there's any news to share. Reptruff versus Detroit was extremely wet. Many drop passes. Yes, I think the official count was at 6 for Green Bay. I know ESPN tracked it at 3. I think everywhere else had them at 6. The thing is, I saw that one stat. I'm sure you saw it too. Green Bay sitting at about 20 drops on the year. Detroit at 1. Detroit and Green Bay were playing on the same field, same wet, same conditions. Green Bay's just got to catch the ball. Kind of just that simple when it comes down to it. So, in amongst a myriad of other things that they got to fix, like penalties. So, all right, everybody, I'm out. Go have a great day. Find some peace tonight, no matter how you're feeling. And at 4 o'clock tomorrow, Lambeau time, I'll be back for LTB Live. Have yourselves a great night, everybody. And as always, go Pack.